I spent over $4,000 on this completely maxed out MacBook Pro so that you don't have to. With all the upgrades on this 16-inch MacBook Pro, it's got the M1 Max chip, a 10-core CPU, 32-core GPU, 64 gigs of freaking RAM, and 2 terabytes of storage. Other than getting 8 terabytes of storage, which is ridiculous, this is maxed out as much as it possibly can be. And in this video, I want to give you my thoughts if this laptop was worth that money. So in this 1-month review, I'm gonna make this extremely simple and break it down into 3 categories. Externals, so hardware, ports, buttons, keys, screens, etc. The user experience. What is it like to use this? Do I feel frustrated when I'm using this machine, or is it doing its job flawlessly? And lastly, and probably most importantly, is the performance of this machine. Like I said, I don't want to waste a second of your time, and there's a lot of information to cover here, so we will dive right in. First up, with externals. As you know, we have the return of ports. Finally, ports. Yes, all the things. We've got HDMI, 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports, an SDXC card reader, yes, a 3.5 headphone jack, and last but not least, the return of MagSafe. And as a reminder, the last time that we saw MagSafe in a MacBook was actually 2015. 6 years ago. And in fact, I actually have one of those laptops. This was the last time that MagSafe existed in a MacBook. And it's kind of hilarious comparing these two, but it's a welcome inclusion to see this many ports back. It's been 6 years, so I'm glad they're here. Now, speaking of the return of MagSafe, the charger connects extremely well and has a very strong magnetic connection. The charging cable is braided, and what's really interesting and kind of a minute thing here, but I love how flexible it is. Normally when you have a braided cable, it's extremely stiff and hard to maneuver. However, this feels extremely flexible, almost like it's been worn in already, but like in a good way, if that makes sense. Like, I don't feel like I'm wearing it in or breaking down the wire when I'm rolling it up. The charging brick is enormous, which makes sense because with some of the upgraded models, you actually get a 96-watt charger. Okay, this is a small thing. This is me being really picky here, but I ordered my laptop in space gray and the charger does not match it. That drives me insane. I know that doesn't actually matter, and I'm, ugh. Anyway, that's just me being picky. It's not a deal breaker, but every time I plug it, I'm just like, like, would it really have been that hard to make the match? Like, Anyway, again, I'm being picky. Moving on. Now, if you're not a huge fan of MagSafe, or if you forget to bring the MagSafe cable with you, you can still charge via the USB-C ports, which I think is awesome. But this is what's really fascinating here, is you will not get the same fast charging if you plug it in via USB-C. You have to use MagSafe in order to get that faster charge, which I think is just kind of interesting there. But I find this really, really handy because a lot of other laptops will have proprietary charging cables that can only fit into that. And if you forget your charger, then you're screwed. But back to the 16-inch laptop, because this is larger, because this is physically larger, being bigger here is actually better. Apple's whole thing has been slim, tiny, small, it's millimeters, whatever. That's their whole thing, right? But in this case, bigger is actually better because inside of that real estate, we have more room for more features. We have the ports. We have a bigger battery. This battery life is bonkers. It's killer good. The fans inside of this are a lot bigger as well, and the fans are able to cool off the laptop a lot faster. They have better speakers that are fit inside of the 16-inch as well. So a lot of these things that I mentioned are unique to the 16-inch versus the 14-inch. So you can spec out the 14-inch and the 16-inch to be exactly the same. However, like I mentioned, because it's physically bigger, there are actual objective differences. So that might be one thing that you want to consider if you're on the fence between the 14 and 16-inch. The keyboard on this laptop is phenomenal. I love this black well that the keyboard sits in now. It looks really good. I'm a big fan. I haven't had any issues with sticky keys, which has been a really big problem in the last couple iterations of Apple's keyboards. For example, the butterfly keys. There were a lot of complaints about them sticking / not working. The touch bar is now missing. We have the traditional keys back, and I didn't mind the touch bar when I had it, but for a lot of other people, there were a lot of issues because if you think about it, an additional screen is just another area for things to glitch out and mess up and fail. We have a larger Touch ID key. I would say this key is reminiscent to the old Touch ID back when that was on the iPhone. Now, as for this screen, This screen, ooh, wow, it's really good. This may be the best screen on a laptop that's ever existed. This screen is shared with the extremely expensive $5,000 XDR display that Apple has created back with the Mac Pro. Seeing this screen now on a laptop is kind of insane. Now, it's not quite OLED, which is totally fine, but with the addition of mini LED, the contrast between whites and blacks is really, really good. And you can really see that difference here if we compare it to my M1 MacBook Air, but you can see a pretty clear difference. And this is kind of cute, but every time I edit pictures or anytime I finish a video, I always show my wife just to be like the first peer review, I guess. But every time she has sat down and looked at this laptop, every single time she says, "This screen looks so good." And she's not like a techie nerd like me, but like there's a perceptible difference of how good this screen looks. Now, speaking of the screen, we do have the introduction of a notch. The way that Apple is justifying this is that they are giving you more screen, and having this notch isn't them taking it away. They're just saying you get bonus screen except for this little area. And for those of you who are curious, the mouse actually just floats directly underneath it as if it's not there. So kind of fun. We do have a 1080p camera inside of the laptop. Finally, I believe this is the first time that they've ever had a 1080 camera inside of any of their MacBooks. It's always been 720. But anyway, 1080, finally, good. So moving on to the user experience. What is it like to actually use it? And I gotta say, good, like real good. Here's why. ProMotion was introduced to the iPhone 13 Pro and Pro Max, but it was also added into these laptops. Now, if you're not familiar with what ProMotion means, most screens are locked at 60 Hertz or 60 frames per second. I can't really show you that because this video will be uploaded in 24 frames per second, but this ramps up all the way to 120 Hertz when needed, but ramps back down to adjust for whatever you're looking at on the screen. It won't make a perceptible difference in streaming videos, for example, and to my knowledge, I don't think there is a streaming service that supports 120 frames per second anyway. But as far as using the device, it makes all the difference. Opening apps, sliding between pages, scrolling, all of those will feel buttery smooth because of ProMotion. It makes everything feel really snappy, instantaneous, and incredibly smooth. The fans are physically bigger as well, so they can move more airflow, which is good. They barely turn on, and when they do, I barely notice them. It's a huge improvement from what we've experienced in the past, because previously it feels like someone's just sitting inside your laptop with a hairdryer, and it's not a good experience. Okay, so my microphone died and I didn't notice until it was too late. Anyway, it's another day. Let's wrap up this video. Now for the meat and potatoes. What is the performance like with this fully kitted out MacBook Pro? With all of these specs, it feels like this thing should run a spaceship. So talking about the performance of this MacBook, I've been really impressed with what it's been able to handle. The only time that I've noticed any complication is sometimes when I'm editing in Final Cut Pro, the preview of the waveforms won't load for maybe like 5 to 10 seconds. I don't know if that's an issue with the laptop itself. They're just 4K files from my Canon R5, so I'm not sure what's going on there. Who knows? Maybe that's something that can be fixed with an update. Maybe that's the actual performance. I'm not sure. And a few times I've been getting this notice, and every time it comes up, I'm like, no, I spent like $1 bajillion on this. That shouldn't be happening. But I did a little research, and to my knowledge, it seems like that's actually pretty common, and it seems to be an issue with Monterey, not with the machine itself. So it seems like that at least can be covered in an update. So can I recommend the fully spec'd out 16-inch MacBook Pro for you? Honestly, probably not. I think this device is complete overkill for 99% of people, even myself. With the announcement of M1 last year, I've been waiting for this laptop for over a year, and before that, I was holding out on upgrading from the last one as well. So this machine, I've been saving up for quite a bit, and I knew that whenever it would come out, I would get the most bestest version because I knew that I wouldn't be spending money on a laptop for a long time before and after this purchase. But what I can recommend 1000% is to go for the 16-inch, not the 14-inch. If portability is extremely important to you and that's a deal breaker, maybe not. But if you're okay with this slightly bigger size, because there's more room inside, the thermals perform a little bit better, the speakers are bigger, and the extremely obvious part is that the screen is bigger too. Like we mentioned earlier, this is probably the best laptop screen to ever exist on a laptop. So spending that extra money for 2 more inches is definitely worth it in my opinion. Anyway, I've been really happy with what this laptop has to offer, with the inclusion of ports, and with Apple really investing as M1 being their future. I've been really happy with the results that I've been getting. If you like this video, like it actually makes a difference, and please comment down below if there are things that you would like me to test. I have a ton of videos lined up, and you definitely don't want to miss those, so if you're not already, it would mean a lot if you would consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.